Hello everyone. Welcome and let's continue with my teaching learning session of BPCC 131 with me Sonal Singh Pawar. We are going to continue with unit 2 today after the introduction of psychology is understanding in the foundation. What was psychology all about? What is its scope? Do we have researches in psychology? What kind of researches do we do in psychology? And now we come to the internal core of psychology, which talks about what is it dealing with. So the first most important part that we're going to start today is unit 2, which is going to talk about sensation and perception, which also include attention to us. So speaking of that, sensation is the awareness due to which stimulations of sense organs are done and further is perceived. So anything that impinges on your sense organ leads to sensation. Also, to be noted that without the functional sense organ, sensation is incapable. So, if taste, touch, smell concerns, they would probably have difficulty in having a psychological attribute concern, which is sensation. So, sensation is an awareness of the stimulation of the sense organs, and perception is the organization and interpretation of the sensation. So, we need to know until sensation doesn't happen, perception will never take place. Perception is about making meaning of the sensation. It is interpreting what your sense organs have perceived. There are six senses. So we have eyes, we have ears, nose, skin, taste, and touch. Also, the fact that they have mentioned six rather than five is the six talks about the special sense organs which are a part of us, but we do not include it in sense organ. These are called the vestibular senses. And vestibular senses are the senses of orientation. Kinesthetic and vestibular come together. This is called as the sixth part and the sixth one. Speaking of that, so let's just again understand that we have five sense organ, including one special one. The five talks about the eyes, the ears, the taste, the touch, and also at the same time the tongue. Tongue talks about your taste at the same time. Now the special one that we are talking about, the sixth one, is vestibular and kinesthetic. So speaking of vestibular and kinesthetic is going to talk about what? It is going to talk about kinesthetic and vestibular organs. These are special because not everyone holds it. We all are capable of showing it. We all have as we mentioned, we all have it in us, but we all do not have the capacity to show it. So vestibular and kinesthetic is present in all of us. What is kinesthetic? The ability of movement. Kinesthetic, some people are kinesthetic. They learn when they move. We've seen a lot of children study while walking. So they are kinesthetic learners. So movement being an essential part of them, an appropriate movement is called kinesthetic. Vestibular is orientation being correct, balance. These are gymnasts. These are athletes. So sharp movement, accurate movement is vestibular that we talk about. So this makes it six sense organs, and rather it's five. The sixth one is something which is special in nature. Then they also mention that the stimuli which is present in the environment actually makes us capable to start sensing it and then perceiving it. So we need to know our environment is the stimulant to us. So anything which is happening in the environment. So let's take an example. You're watching this session and there's a loud noise. Remember that is happening in your environment. That can cause a different kind of sensation while learning, and you might interpret the sessions with a lot of difficulty. Why? Because there is an interrupted noise. There's a lot of disturbance, the cracking voice that is coming around you all the time in your environment. So remember, the environment becomes the stimuli that could lead to sensation, and further, whatever is the sensation will lead to perception. Now, moving ahead, we need to know that human sense has this energy, has this capacity to translate the physical energy into electrical by specialized receptor and transmitters in our brain. So we need to know these transmitters that convert the physical energy into electrical impulses. It's called neurotransmitters. We need to know the neurons which run in our brain has the capacity to convert any physical movement into electrical movement. That's how everything happens. Let's take an example. Feeling hot, you pick up something cold. That converts the sense of perception that you've interpreted as hot, and holding that water which is cold will give you a perception of relaxation because you have something cold in your hand, and further drinking it, that physical sense will now convert into electrical impulse. The action which is done is converted in a new nerve impulse. The nerve impulse is carried out and leads to something which is relaxation in the body because of cold water which is being drunk. So perception is a process through which we interpret everything around us. Remember, perception only happens when there is sensation correctly happening. So if there is sensation which is not appropriate, if the sensation is not correct, or probably we say if the sensation is not done correctly, or there are some distractions, some confusion during sensation, remember perception equally will not be done correctly. You can go through the snippets which is given on the screen, so there is less of confusion. So what did we understand from the screen? One, we understood what is sensation and perception. What enables sensation? Sensation is enabled through your five sense organs. We also learned about one another unique sense organ, which is the sixth sense organ comprising of two, which is kinesthetic and vestibular. Then speaking of that, we have talking about that our environment becomes a stimuli for sensation. Once this environment provides a stimuli, we convert this physical energy. Our brain has the capacity of converting this physical energy into electrical energy through electrical impulses through the neurons. Then speaking of that, we spoke about perception is a process through which we interpret, organize all the information which is received from our sense organs in our conscious mind. So we need to remember that there is a strong relationship between whatever that whatever is impinged in your sense organs, and how do we organize it, interpret it, and make sense out of it. So that completes with something that we call as perception. Let's understand the differences. The image is also there. One of the most important things that we need to know, is there a difference between perception and sensation? There is. First, we need to know sensation is the first paramount process that leads to perception. Perception is not possible without sensation. Also, sensation is about receiving all the information on the five sense organs, of your body, and then further interpreted by the brain. This interpretation further leads to a process called perception, which is interpretation of the information which is received by the sense organ. And where is the source of the sensation coming from? It's coming from the environment, from all the five sense organs. And here the source is the brain, which is from the sense organ, the information that is received. What is the result of sensation? It's perception. What is the result of perception? It is an organized information, a perceived form, an interpreted complete picture. That's what perception gives us. This is a biological process. Sensation is a complete biological process. Remember, perception is a combination of two. It's highly psychological. That is further also based upon biological body. That completes with the understanding that sensation and perception are two different forces of psychology, and they have their own important, their important source. They have their own important being. But remember, without sensation, perception is not capable. So that completes with the differences and seemingly similarity between the two. Now let's understand that when we talk about sensation and perception, we need to know which is the most glorified sense organ that we have. It's the eye. The distribution of the eye is given on the picture. Let's understand what kind of sensation does these physical energies sense organ provide us. So there are physical energies that come in very different form of sensation. Some provided through taste, some provided through touch, some from vision, some from hearing. And there are other kind of stimulation that we get, which is physical energy, which is emanates from the objects such as light, sound wave, the noise around you, the heat, the temperature, cold, hot, snowing, all of this, and touch. Also taste, at times smell of the food can also trigger you taste. So remember, there are so many physical energies that can actually lead to sensation. At times, objects can also provide sensation, like a water bottle kept in front of you can provide you sensation drinking water. An amazing dish served in a bowl can actually make you feel tempted. So it could lead to mouth watering, which is again taste. So we need to know that the process of sensation is transduction, which is converting the physical energy into electrical energy through neurons. So the main process we need to know is sensation, as we mentioned earlier. It's a complete biological process. There isn't anything psychological. So if you feel that any information which is coming through your sense organ is psychological, no, it is just impinged in a direct form, physically, and then converted into electrical information in your body through brain. So, speaking of that, let's understand that eye has the ability to adapt, and because of that, this entire human eye, as a as a diagram, as illustration has been shown to you. Let's understand the small parts of it. The top at the top at the right has something which is cornea. Remember, cornea is a portion through which the light enters, and most is the refraction part of it. It gets refracted. Then let's come to something which is iris. Iris is a muscle that control the pupil, that control the amount of light that comes in. So you see the center of it. Then let's come below to that. That's called pupil. It controls the amount of light that comes in. So pupil control the iris controls the size of the pupil. The pupil tells us that do I need to have this much of light or this much of light fitting in into the pupil. Then there is a crystalline lens, forms inverted when a real image is formed. So crystallized lens has the ability to convert your image into inverted image, like the optic nerve that we talk about. So, and then we have ciliary muscles that actually adjust the focal length of the lens. And then is vitreous humor. Vitreous humor is responsible for the cushion of your eye, for any sort of shock, any sort of any sort of heat, tightness is taken care by the vitreous humor. Then we have retina, one of the most important part. Image is formed on the retina. It has enormous amount of light cells, which are light sensitive cells. And then we have the optic nerve, the electrical signals sent to brain by the optic nerve. So it's, remember when we talk about the ciliary muscles, it takes care of the focal length, the amount of image, the lens, and the focal image. Remember, when we have the crystalline lens, the inverted image is formed, and this image goes through the optic nerve to your brain for perception. So see, how does an image being formed? Let's take an example. You're watching the screen. The screen lets the light enter, which is the cornea lets the amount of color image which is goes inside. Then the iris is going to control your pupil. That do we need too much of focal or too less of focal? That is the pupil, the amount of light coming in. Then the image is being formed. So whatever is written on the screen is taken care by the lens. This lens inverts this image and sends it to your optic nerve. The optic nerve finally takes it to the brain. Retina is the place where the image is formed, and ciliary muscle is the focal length of your lens. So that's something which is one of the most glorified sense organ that we have, which is the eye. Let's move to the next one, most important, which is called the ear. And ear has an equal amount of adaptation in our environment. Before that, let's talk about two more interesting facts about the eye, which is the light and the dark adaptation. It's such a fun fact that we have. I'm sure everyone has gone through such a activity when you go to movie halls or come out of movie halls. So let's understand this, and you can actually do this by putting off the light and putting on the light in your own room. The process of adjusting to the bright light after being exposed to dim light is called light adaptation. So as soon from the darker portion you come to lighter portion. So coming out from a movie hall after 3 hours, if you stayed inside the movie hall, is called light adaptation. The process of dark adaptation is the process of adjusting to the dim light after exposure of dark light. This is moving from the outside to the movie hall. So from the bright light moving inside the movie hall is something which is called the dark adaptation. Remember, dark adaptation takes longer time because it takes the breakdown of cells that happens inside our in our eye. There is breaking of cell that happens, and then bleaching also happens. So that's the photochemical effect that happens inside our brain. Remember, the rods are the photosensitive cell and are the black and white, whereas cones are the colored ones. Rods are usually the photosensitive, they're the black and white, and the color from the sea, the colored is the cones. Due to this, the rod takes more time for adaptation. The fact that the rods need to adjust to the black and white sensitivity, they take more time. Whereas the colored adaptation, when we talk about adaptation to the light, which is coming from the dim to the light, the dark adaptation, the rhodopsin gets bleached as soon as light falls onto them. The rhodopsin gets bleached because of vitamin E and A. So people who have problems with vitamin E and A, they might have problems with dark adaptation equally with light adaptation. So some of the other diseases, that simple diseases of the eye that we have because of sightedness, is far-sightedness, which is hyperopia, and nearsightedness, which is myopia. The ability to discriminate properly in details and field of vision is called visual acuity. So your ability to discriminate between details properly around you is called visual acuity. That completes with vision. eyes in a in a nutshell. Let's move to ear. We need to know one of the most important sense organ is ear after eyes, and it has three characteristics: pitch, loudness, and timbre. Remember, these three characteristics is something that adjusts the kind of tone that are coming. The fact that you listen to me and the amount of loudness that comes to you is called the loudness. Timbre is the intonation going up and down, and you're able to adjust to that. That's called timbre. Pitch is the screechiness. The high point of your voice and the low point of your voice is the pitch. And then there are three parts of the ear: the outer ear, the middle ear, the inner ear, which helps in auditory function. So let's just check your own ear. The fact that you put your hands inside the ear like this is called the outer ear. This is where the cochlear nerve actually is starting. This is the point where the this is where the external ear, the auditory canal is starting. You can please see on on the right hand side, you can check it. The cochlear canal, the canal that you put your finger in at times, and also when there's discomfort, you put your finger. That's called the external cochlear canal. Any sort of discomfort in the external ear can be taken care of. And after that, we have something which is the tympanic cavity, the cavity which is the closed, which is usually called the drum. That's the cavity. That's called the tympanic cavity, and the outside is called the membrane. Then inside are the ones which is incus malus stapes. They are responsible for tuning your sound and transferring your sound from the inner ear to the middle ear. The incus malus stapes is the middle ear. Incus, malus, and stapes. Stapes is the oval window that you see, that the oval small little window. That's stapes that carries it to the middle ear. And from incus and from malus it goes to stapes. From incus goes to malus and then goes to stapes. Stapes takes it to the semicircular canal, which is the inner ear. And further, then it makes sense, moves inside the cochlea. The sounds vibrates, and hits your vestibular tube, hits the brain. And remember, the middle ear injuries can also be treated, but it's said that usually the inner ear injuries can never be treated because that's responsibility of the brain. That the connection to the brain is too much. Either it could be because of some brain injury, it could be because of some accident which is organic in nature. Outer ear can be taken care of, and at some extent even the middle ear can be taken care of. Also, let's come to another sense, which is smell. Smell provides an information about the chemicals which are around you and you are surrounded by. The air having chemicals, the receptors of the top nasal cover actually gets activated through smell. Carlson in 1998 stated that human olfactory receptors can detect any substance with a molecular weight of 15 to 30. Anything lesser than 15 cannot be detected by our nose. Anything too much of 30 cannot be detected. Chemical. Then that I don't say that above 30 we are not able. We are able to perceive it, but not we are not. We are able to receive it, but not able to perceive it. That means anything above 30 and at a molecular weight will cause confusion. We will not be able to detect, discriminate it. Also, chemical substances called pheromones, which trigger particular reaction in members of our own kind, is also something which is present in human detectors, like the olfactory receptors. Let's come to the other, which is called the taste. Taste depends upon the taste buds, which are scattered all over our tongue. It's usually on the upper and the side. And four basic tastes that we have is sweet, salty, sour, and bitter. These are the four that we have. Then we come to something which is touched, skin, senses, the fact, which are four different sensations, which is cold, pain, pressure, and warmth. So speaking of this, remember, when we speak of this, a combination of four different sensations of pressure, of warmth, and cold, pain is something which is maximally perceived by us. Cold receptors, sensation and perception are 6 times more than the heat. And that's the reason, remember, we tend to have higher amount of cold than heat. Heat is perceived at one amount of time. You can check into two different individuals. Heat is still being perceived, still being adapted, and still being adjusted to. Cold can lead to freezing of body, freezing of bones, and also at times freezing of your blood. So remember, cold receptors are 6 times more than the heat receptors. So as lower as the temperature you can put down in heat, and as higher as temperature you put down in heat. And as in cold, remember, the lesser temperature of cold will be far more heart-wrenching and troublesome than heat at the moment. So the fact that nowadays we are experiencing heat of 46 to 50 degrees Celsius, it's still bearable. The body can adapt by putting on fans and air conditioning. Remember, cold at the simplest extent, it goes to -10. It would be unbearable for us. A lot of people will suffer from anemia, will lead to, will also have problems of blood, will have freezing bloods, will also have difficulty in eating. Their pipes will get choked. That's how high intensity of cold is in comparison to the heat. Then there are individual differences we need to know, as I just mentioned. There is a special sense which is called the vestibular and kinesthetic that I discussed above with you. That finishes with 6 senses that we have. Vestibular and kinesthetic are the special sense that I spoke about in the earlier starting of the unit 2. Let's move ahead. Let's start with the concept of perception. What is perception? The perception is interpreting organization of the sensation in the consciousness and further interpreted by your brain. So remember, in order to sense the world, to view it, to see it, to feel it, to make sense out of the raw materials, the sense organs, we further proceeded to something which is called as perception. So it's recognition, it is interpretation, providing meaning to this information which is called as perception. Let's just understand this entire league of how perception actually goes on in points and in steps. First of all, let's take the stimuli comprises of a great smell. You have food coming in onto the table. Obviously, vision also. The presentation of food will also trigger us. So many stimuli, which is the sight, the smell, and the taste is being triggered. The sensory receptors are triggered in 3. Then you attend to it. You tend to see the food is very beautifully presented. It is smelling well. It will taste well equally. Remember, then you interpret it. You interpret the food is going to be tasted well. It is being presented well. It's kept so neatly. There's so much of hygiene which is maintained. Remember, after this interpretation, you tend to start making meaning out of it. The kind of place that I've come into actually has food like this. You start responding to it. Responding is your body starts getting ready to feast on it. And further, once you start finding the food to be tempting and good enough, you feast on it, which is called perception. You agreed and you made meaning out of it, and further response that the food is going to be healthy and hygienic. That is what is called as perception. So its sensory receptors are activated, we further attend to it. Interpretation is made after attention. Remember another thing. Let's try and remove each and see if it works. You remove attention. Can you actually organize and interpret your sense organs? No. The information will not be interpreted if you do not attend to it. So I'll give you a simple example. Let's take an example. You use a route to go from your workplace to your house every day, but you've not been attending what's the route, how many right and left turns do I need to take, and it's been almost like 4-5 months. And once at an odd time, there's a construction going on around which is actually made a change in your route, and now you're picking up another route and moving on to it. So when you're picking another route and moving on to it, did you realize you are able to perceive that there's a change in route, but the fact that you did not attend it, you are not able to interpret the route. You don't know where your workplace is because you did not attend to the site. Similarly, there's another person who goes through the same route every day, notes the amount of right, left turns around it, is very cautious, cautious of the fact that if this route is not available, I'll be taking this one. And then there's a construction in the middle way. The person is able to find a new route, interpret it, respond to it, and then perceive it accordingly. Why? Because of attention. So remember, attention is paramount. It's important for arousal. It's important to conduct the entire interpretation. So let's move ahead. Let's move to something which is attention. What is attention? See, attention is a process through which we focus on a certain number of stimuli that are selected from the huge pool of items. And without attention, as I mentioned, perception is never enabled. We cannot do anything without attention. It's not possible at all. So what are we going to talk about in terms of attention? We are going to talk about theories of attention and factors impacting attention, both internal factors and external factors. Let's move to the types of attention. First of all, we have 3 types of attention: selected, focused, and divided. Selective attention is like the definition of attention. It talks about selecting the most important, something that you are searching for from the pool of many stimuli. So it's a searchlight metaphor. which is visual sampling behavior. So out of five things, if you're searching for one thing, you out of the five, you will look for that one thing. So let's take another example. In a crowded area, you're looking for your mother. You will be only addressing the fact, the demeanor of your mother, what she usually wears and what she looks like. You will actually avoid all the other. That is something which is called sampling behavior. Visual sampling behavior, also called as the searchlight metaphor. Then we talked about focused attention. This is to concentrate only on one thing at a time, completely focusing on one thing at a time. I feel focused attention is something that we expect children to do when they are studying for the examination, and that's something that we as teachers we always expect, and counselors we always expect you to concentrate on one source of information and then go to the next. Then we talk about the divided attention. Someone who has the ability. Divided attention is the aspect which enables us to focus attention on multiple things. So at one thing also, and simultaneously you're able to give the same amount of attention to the second thing. A very beautiful example of this that we all encounter while taking classes. Your teacher is taking classes in the front area. You listen to your teacher at the same time your friends are talking about something at the background, and you tend to listen to your friends also. So this is something which is called as divided attention. Your equal portion of attention going to two items. That's called divided attention. The three types, please kindly go through the image. Selective, focused, and divided. And please read it for clarity. Let's move to the next. After attention being types, we will understand the process of perception here. Once we've done the types of attention, we've understood that attention usually goes after sensation. It's after you get the stimuli from any of the senses, like from the audition, from the ear, or from the eyes. You jump to attention. Attention will help you interpret. Interpretation will help you respond, and response will lead to perception. Now let's understand how does perception takes place and what is the process of it. So there is selection that happens, and there is organization, and then happens interpretation. So as per the image, let's go according to the image here. Step one, we tend to limit the attention only to the things that are available to us, or probably if it is a focused attention, only the thing that we want to focus on. If it's selective attention, we will probably only focus on something which we want to select out of the many pool. So this is the selection part. Important, relevant, or something that you're focusing on, which is selection. Then we move to organization. Once you've selected five things and five items, remember, you would be organizing it. Speaking of organization, you're organizing that sense data in some meaningful ways. So probably in structures, into categories, into colors, into medium, into some sort of categories, they are organized. Once the organization happens, we are able to perceive it, which attach meaning, give it a relevant definition, give it a relevant thought. That's what is called interpretation. So until you don't select and organize something, put it into a rough design, you will not be able to interpret it. So that's how selection, organization, and interpretation, which is the entire core of perception in terms of perception, takes place. Now, as we say that people have individual differences, there cannot be one kind of perception. Yes, there cannot be one kind of perception. There are so many people. There are people who use perception in other ways. There are people who use perception or perceiving in different ways. Keeping that in mind, we have two kinds of perception, which is top down and bottom up. So top down is the prior knowledge suggests that the image that you see could be B or 13. So the person who is top down will see the image to be B or 13. Remember, bottom up will take them as horizontal lines. So that means the top down talks about seeing the image as whole, then to pieces. So they will see an entire picture, the whole picture, and then to pieces. Whereas bottom up sees information as pieces, reveals into horizontal lines and vertical lines, and then goes to a complete image, which is a complete big picture that we have. So let's talk about the two kinds. You all can see, look at any picture that you have, see if you're able to label it at a first go without getting into intricacies of, okay, there are two lines here, two people standing here. So if you don't get into intricacies, remember you are top down. But if you're getting into intricacies, like there are three horizontal lines, two vertical lines, okay, this can also be 13, okay, this can also be B. Remember, it's bottom up. Pieces to whole is bottom up. Whole to pieces is top down. These are two kinds of perception. A lot of us can have both of them, but one has to be in majority. Remember, we all can never take care of two together. So that talks about the two types of perception that we have. You can actually judge which one do you have. Now let's move ahead to laws of perception, one of the most important part of perception. When the thought of perception came up, Gestalt psychologists were people who gave us perceptual organization. As we studied in our first unit, we studied that Gestalt was the perspective that talked about whole is better than the sum of the parts. So your psyche can be understood as whole rather than putting it into the sum of the parts. So Gestalt psychology actually means form psychology. Anything that's organized, anything that's complete makes more sense. Is help us will help us make our psyche understand things better than anything else. So there are many principles that helps us, understand this thing of whole is better than the sum of the parts. So the construction of whole happens through the laws of perceptual organization. So all the items which are kept in front of us are perceptually organized according to Gestalt laws. What are these laws? First is the law of figure and ground relationships. That's figure and ground. I'm sure everyone can see a lot of images there, right? So what is the figure? Figure is something which is darker in color. Remember, it has contours. It is limited. What is the ground? Ground is the background. It's the lighter color. It's limitless. I'm sure a lot of you in the first view might be seeing the tree, right? Because it's the figure. And a lot of you might have been visualizing a gorilla and a tiger on the lighter side. Check the image properly. And if you're able to see it, see, did you see figure and ground? The ground can also make us an image, but it enables us to make proper images and is enable to organize the image on the basis of figure and ground. Another example, when a bird is flying in the air, remember it usually is darker in color, contoured, it has a shape, it's limited in shape, and it's darker. And at the same time, the ground, which is the sky, is limitless, it's lighter in color, and remember it's endless. So the figure stands out and the ground is at the background. Also remember, if there's a similar color bird of the sky, remember it gets very difficult to find it out. Why? Because the figure needs to be dark, needs to be contoured, needs to be limited in shape, color and size. That's the first law that talks about figure and ground relationship. Let's come to the second law, that's called the law of proximity, whereas the stimuli which are placed together to each other are perceived as belonging to each other. This can also be seen in terms of genders, which is males and females. As time, there are places where are lines made of males separately and females separately because of the proximity of the gender. Also in a class, a teacher is able to identify who's friend. Why? Because you guys are sitting together so proximately together with your friends, and your teachers get to know that there's high proximity. The more the closeness, the more that you perceive together all the time. So if there's any difficulty, any problem, any any naughty notorious activity that you've done, your teacher gets hold of all of you together. So that is something which is law of proximity that you can see. That was the same figure and ground relationship. You can see a vase, everyone can see a vase, and in the second you can see faces, two faces. That's the magic of figure and ground. Then they talks about law of proximity given below. The objects that are near to one another in space are usually taken as belonging to one another. Remember, the one which are together circled looks like a mat. The four together, checkered four, the quad four, are usually because of their proximity. You can look at the image and I'll shift. It's two laws done, figure and ground and law of proximity. Let's move ahead. Now we have law of good figure, law of pragnance or similarity. Law of good figure, the figure is, and the law of good figure is also known by the law of pragnance. Pragnance is a German word meaning good figure. Good figure also, we as humans have this ability to always check out figure as a complete whole. Check out figure always complete. Even if something is distorted, we would love to check it out as a complete figure. A tendency to organize into a symmetrical whole balanced figure. Let's take the example. What do we call this as? Olympic rings. Why? We have that ability to label it as a good figure, a complete figure. Otherwise, if this was not as Olympic rings, we would have difficulty labeling it as blue and yellow, black, green rings are entangled into each other in a shape of 3 and 5. But at the moment, it's so simple. A pregnance, law of pregnance, complete, whole. These are Olympic lines. Now let's move to law of continuity. This refers to the tendency to perceive figures in continuation. So this talks about when we have the tendency to perceive things better when they're coming in a form of continuation. So remember, this looks like an X. The other also looks like an X, and one is a standing line. So we perceive continuous things far better than distracted and broken things. Law of good faith is next, which involves movement, which is this. Did we realize law of movement? Birds flying together. Also, at times, usually it's seen in flock of birds. Also, when we have some sort of parades which are happening, and we have the fly jets, making some sort of trio and moving apart. That's also the law of motion. This law involves movement. That's called the law of common fate. Common fate, why? They're moving in a common direction and making something which is visibly organized, and it involves movement equally. Then we come to one of the most fanciest law, which is called the law of closure. Closure is one of the most important law, and let's understand them in a vision of how do they make sense of the environment. Once we complete all of them, then we go back to the laws and tell you how do they actually organize your environment. So let's complete first the law of closure. We sense many things to be complete despite their incomplete or has missing parts. We will understand this by the figure below. What do we see in the figure below? I'm sure we see a triangle which is being masked by circles like that. So that's our tendency to see figures which are known to be complete figures and not incomplete. Then we have law of similarity. Similar items to be grouped together, like squares, circles, stars, are grouped together on the basis of shape, size, color, whatever it be. So on the first half, we have the color, similar pinks and purples separately. In the second, we have a line of circles, and then the squares and cubes are separate. And the last, we have again the colors. So did you understand one thing? The laws helps us categorize either on the basis of color, shape, vision, area, etc. Now let's, as I said at the later time that we'll be able to understand, I will tell you at the end that how does it all fall in place. So see, common faith is G. We see it in continuous motion. It gives us a 3D image. Look at the G. Seems like moving. Closure is E. That incomplete E is obviously, we all know that. Continuity, S. Despite there's a distraction in between of dollar, but still we see it as dollar S. Then we talk about proximity. Similar, the proximity makes a T to us. The blues together. This can also be similarity. T can also be taken as similarity. The similar colors together. Common region. Look at the figure in ground. The X point makes it A. That's the figure in ground. Common region that we talk about. Common region is falling into an area which makes it an L. Also, this can be used also as similarity. And the last is again symmetry. Seeing it as good pregnancy is T is something that we always wish like. Remember, this is what, the organization, the laws of perception does to us. It helps us organize items around us in convenient holes so that we are able to interpret it well. If you do not have these laws, remember categorization, organizations is going to be incomplete. So after attention, Gestalt laws are extremely important. Why? We will not be able to organize, we will not be able to categorize in colors and forms and shapes. Now, after understanding what actually makes organization possible, let's understand what are the factors that are actually impacting perception. Is there something else also apart? General perception impacted by noise or some distraction? Let's see what are the factors that can change your perception into from A to Z or Z to A. So let's understand what are the factors. Let's first understand these factors in this, always diagrams, illustrations, always beautiful ways to understand the factors impacting perception. So first is the factors that can impact the situation and perception could be a work setting, the social setting, and time. Time is morning, afternoon, evening. Work setting is if it's a good setting, if it's a bad setting. Social setting, if it's a facilitating setting, crowded social environment, or limited social environment. That can also change your perception about people, about situation. Then there is factors in the perceived, that is originality, the sound, the background, the similarity that can also change our perception. They're the factors of the perceiver, the one who's perceiving, their attitude, how motivated are they, their interest, and their expectation. Remember, I always say that if you go to a counselor expecting that I'm going to be getting my problem and difficulty solved, remember you're interested, you're expecting it, you're highly motivated. That will impact the perception. You will be very positively going for the counseling. Remember, the same time in the factors of perception, the work area where the psychologist is sitting is too noisy, sound. The background is dirty. They're not on time. The work setting is unhygienic. That will impact your perception despite you are motivated or have an interest for counseling. So this is how your perception of things can change. So let's read them now. Effective motivation and need and set as perceptual determinants. This was an experiment done by Sanford also. It shows that this is the perceptual determinant is another set which is called as our perception is also impacted by our expectation or perceptual set of something. When we are expecting something to happen or our body is expecting something to happen, we view it in the similar context. Like if you're expecting your friend to be coming from almost half an hour, any phone call, any ring of bell will make you perceive it's my friend. That's the perceptual determinant. A similar example and similar experiment was done by Sanford in 1936. He showed people pictures who were hungry people who were extremely hungry pictures, and they could just make fruits, and they were images, but they could just make, they could see images of pizza, fruits. Why? Because they were hungry. So that's again perceptual set. Then there is an expectation and perceptual expectancy set. When we're expecting something to happen, we expect it to happen at the same time. When you know your milkman comes at 5:30 to 6 a.m. in the morning, so whichever bell ring at 6, you expect your milkman to be there. That expectation and perceptual expectancy. Effective emotion. Remember, if you're extremely happy and ecstatic, your ecstasy is the hint. You're happy to start with an event. Remember, your effective emotion will change that event to be a happy event. No matter what's happening, you want things to be great. Your emotions will change it. Then we have stimulus characteristic. If the stimulus is bright, attractive, and moving, obviously it's going to attract more attention rather than something which is dull and confusing. Then effective experience, something that you already know, familiarity and similarity, and effective culture. Effective culture depends on people to people. Some people are a part of a culture which impacts their knowledge of organization and knowledge of what do you call this? Their knowledge of understanding, their knowledge of understanding things can be changed through their culture. They might have a different understanding of the world. They might perceive world differently. So let's take the two images at below. You see ABC, the B can become 13 also. See the one above, that is 12, and the next is 14. 12, 13, 14, ABC, the B can become 13 also. Do you see this? This can look like a man with a specs and it's also a rat. So see, that's perception. Whatever, if your perception is motivated, you will see all of it, and if it's dull and you're bored at the moment, you probably do not see the different things in the images. So this is the magic of perception interpretation that we have. Now let's come to one of the most important part of perception, which are called depth cues, and it's called the depth perception. What is depth perception? This is the depth perception in maths that we studied: height, length, and depth. So this is what we call as the depth perception. The 3D vision is called the depth, not the 2D. So depth perception refers to the ability to see the world in 3D dimension. This is called the 3D dimension, and enables us to judge not only the distance of the object, but also being able to understand the distance, the length, and the depth. And if there's no depth in the perception, remember, it would be very difficult to walk on roads. You will feel the road is ended if you are not able to see the depth and the distance together. If you will not be able to drive cars. The rear view mirror will not be able to be adjusted because the depth is not there. The distance and depth is not perceived well. Also, depth perception is supported by two kind of cues. Cues are what? Support, the stimulants. Monocular cues and binocular cues. We will understand both the cues today, and that's something that we are going to wrap up for the day that we have. Let's first give you some example of depth perception. Let's take an example. You are standing in a room and you see two cupboards over there. Tall cupboards that you see. Remember, if the depth perception does not, enable us, what will happen? You will just see the length of the cupboard and not the depth of the cupboard. How deep the cupboard is. So remember, depth enables us to judge the environment, to walk on streets, to be able to drive a car. So while you're driving a car steering, you have a rear view mirror, you have a mirror at the sides, the outside mirror. Remember, if the rear view is not there, if depth is not understood, the distance, all the cars will be clashing to one another when you cannot judge the distance and the depth between the two. This is what depth enables us. Also, it is supported by two kinds of cues. The monocular cue. Monocular is seen from one eye. That's it's called monocular. You can see it from both eyes, but at different times. Binocular is seen from both eyes. So that's called the binocular cues. I would want you to read it for an instance. You can see the image also and read what is called the monocular and binocular cues. These are the two cues that function. I'll repeat it again. Mono, one eye, which is a cue which is being able to happen from this also. And then if I close this, it will be perceived from this also. So though we don't need both the eyes. Binocular is both the eyes needed at the same time. Let's continue and understand. Monocular needs one eye to be perceived, as I mentioned. Monocular cues include perspective, clearness, overlapping, shadow, and texture gradient. We will study this in length in the next sessions of Unit 2. This will talk about that monocular cue enables you to see a path, is able to make you see graded areas and pebbled areas. It's able to make you see the aerial perspective, air which is dusty and then beyond it. Texture as well, able to see something which is kept in front is bigger and the one which is kept at the back usually looks smaller. Remember, the most complex monocular cue is motion parallax. The reason that it's one of the most complex because this is a monocular cue and it's in motion. So it's quite difficult. It's happening parallelly to you and it's in motion and it's only of the one eye. That means both the eye can view it. You don't need a binocular cue. You don't need both eye to function for this. So that's why it's called something which is one of the most complex. Motion parallax is the tendency of the object to move forward or backward depending upon how far away that you are from it. So it's like a parallel thing, you watching from here, and it's in motion. A best example would be trains. I'll explain this in the next class to you with the images. It's a beautiful example of monocular cue. Let's dive into binocular cues. So binocular cues requires a vision of two eyes. Another thing, people who have defects in the eye, probably could have been night blindness, too much of hypermyopia or simple myopia, they might have difficulties in perception of binocular cue. And I'm talking about myopias and any far-sightedness or close-sightedness to be visually highly deformed. It should not be -1, it should -9, something. I'm talking about that deformity of the vision. Or there could be diseases of the eye, which could be night blindness, one eye vision gone. If one eye vision is also called, binocular cue is not possible. The reason, both the eyes are responsible for binocular cue. Another beautiful thing that you need to know, monocular cue is a psychological cue. You perceive it. Binocular cue is a biological cue. That's the reason that I mentioned that both the eye vision needs to be there. You need the vision of both the eyes to be functional for binocular cues, not just one. So that is something that we speak about. Binocular happens from both the eyes. Remember, when we talk about binocular cue, we have something as a cue which is called the retinal disparity. So here they are explaining you the cues itself. So what is a retinal disparity? If I can show you by this, you can also try this at your, you all can pick up a pen, close this eye, you put this pen here, right? Put this pen here, you all can put this pen here. Now close this eye, see where is the pen placed and mark that area, and now close that eye. You will see there's a difference between the two. Like my this eye shows me the pen to be here and my this eye shows the pen to be here. So there's a difference between this much. This is called the retinal disparity. So the disparity of both the eye, if we see it differently, the visual would be this much. That's why binocular is like this. The inverted image being formed, We just saw eyes. We saw the picture of the eye, of the inverted image being formed on the retina and the optic nerve carrying it. So remember, if someone's binocular cue is perceived on the basis of depth and two different images are formed, remember, by the object received, it would be like this. So the if, for example, they mention by retinal disparity is a binocular cue for perceiving depth based on the difference between the two images of the object which is formed on the retina, and as soon it gets closer, the object at the retina receives as the object gets closer. So this gets better if you put it here. So disparity get farther too much if you get it too closer, remember, and if you keep moving it away, the disparity gets better. You can all try it. So the retinal disparity increases once the object comes closer, and the angle decreases if you take it farther away. Why? Because the retina is able to converge, form an image. Then the retinal disparity reduces. Otherwise, the amount of disparity that we have is approximately 6.5 or 16.5 centimeters only. This much, which means 6.5 centimeters. It cannot be this much for anybody. It would be this much if it's too close. Else it's 6.5 for a proper image, proper eye to form an image in front. So retinal disparity is the disparity of image formed on the retina from both the eye separately. Now, on the basis of that, one of the most important cue of binocular cue is called the cue of conversions. Conversion is the binocular cue associated with the feeling of tension in the muscle, the convergence that is formed. So remember, the closer it is, the bigger is the angle, the farther it is, lesser is the angle of convergence. Convergence is the point where which the image is formed on the retina. This finishes with the two most amazing cues that we have. We will study them again. I am repeating an introduction, a little revision for all of you, so that there is lesser amount of confusion of the entire unit to sum it up today. Let's go ahead from the beginning. What all did we converted today? We understood the five senses that we had, and a special sense which I started, which is vestibular and kinesthetic, at the below end, which is bolted. Then we had perception. We spoke about that the perception is something which is organizing and providing, interpreting and providing meaning to the sense information that you get. Also, it has a following of steps that happen that leads to perception. Also, at the same time, remember, attention is paramount for perception. So if anyone feels that without attending to a thing you can perceive it, no. Remember, if there's a message also flashing on your phone, you need to attend to it for a second to being able to understand what is the message. If you're busy, you need to attend to it. You just cannot see it and understand, oh, the message is coming from this person. No, you need to attend to it. Attention is paramount for attention. Remember, attention is something that impacts your attention both internally and externally. Both internally, as in it impacts you internally by your, impacting your cognition, impacting your motivation, and externally by your time, situation, etc. We did three types of attention: selective, focused, and divided. We all are capable of all the three attention. Remember, it's not that there are special people. Remember, we all are capable of all the three. Then we speak about how perception takes place in three steps: selection, organization, and comes the interpretation. Then remember, when we talk about perception, there are two kinds. Any of us can be either of the two. A lot of us can be both of it. But remember, when we talk about it as both of it, one has to be in higher concentration. You can be a top down, you can be a bottom up also, remember, but one would be highly effective. Like I am a top down. I do have bottom up also. I do have that detail checking finickiness also, but that happens only in some situation, not in every situation. So that's something which is top down and bottom up processing, which are the two different kinds of perception. Then we come to laws of perception organization. This was one of the most important thing we did. So when we are talking about sensation, attention, organization, the organization and making sense of things that is happening, it's all because of laws of perceptual organization. Came from whom? It came from Gestalt psychologist. Gestalt, who said that form whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. It's important to understand that whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. You cannot restrict your your perception to parts. I don't know. I'll give you a very beautiful examples of this. Something which not everybody could relate, because this is a part of our generation. There was times when Diwali fates or any kind of fates that used to be happen, that there used to be a magic box that used to tell a story by revolving a machine like that. and you need to sneak into it, and they used to revolve the pictures, one, two, three. They used to revolve it in a motion, in a quicker motion. Remember, if they showed the picture into parts, one, then waited for a minute, then two, it would not make sense. So goes for your movie halls. Remember, if the movies that are shown to you does not happen continuously and the reels got chipped in, scene one, scene two, scene three, like showing the movie the same way that it's made, it would have been confusing, right? So that's whole is better than the sum of the parts. You probably cannot understand things at the parts, like the puzzle pieces kept on the floor and puzzle pieces made. Once you make the puzzle pieces, don't you feel it gets better than anything else? So the whole is better than the sum of the parts. To organize that whole, he said we have some laws which is called as perceptual organization laws. Some of these laws are law of figure ground. Figure ground is one of the most important laws and one of the most beautiful pictures. The vase that I've shown you, this was a vase of major research. This is called as the Rubin vase. The laws of proximity, also the law of pregnance and similarity. Pregnance is seeing things in a complete picture, labeling it as a complete picture. So if we would have do not have the tendency to organize it as Olympic rings, if we call it okay, they are rings, red envelope to green, does not make sense. We are not able to organize it well. Then there is continuation. Then the law of common faith, which is here. Common faith talks about anything that happens to be in common motion, usually seen in helicopters during parades and the birds at the same moment. It's one of the most beautiful picture of common faith. Law of closure, simplest of all kinds. Law of closure, then we have law of similarity. Similar things can be of color, can be of shape, to be grouped together is seen together. This was a beautiful way of telling how Gestalt makes your entire world enable. Now, once you've learned Gestalt principles, I would want you all to enable the world, to understand the world in form of laws, similarity, proximity, closure. We also understood that perception is greatly impacted by factors. Factors that could be of situation, factors that could be of the perceived. Like thing has to be novel, has to be creative, the sound, the background, the similarity. Also, the perceiver plays a very important role. The culture of the perceiver, the attitude, the motive, the interest, aptitude, etc. So this is something which is of a greater impact on perception, that which we usually feel does not make sense, but we need to know that perception is greatly impacted by all of this. Greatly. Let's move ahead. These are some. And remember ABC and the image below. You can be impacted by your culture, by your learning if you're able to see it all. Then the last that we came down to the cues. We came to the two amazing cues that were monocular and binocular, which is enabling the depth perception. Depth is the perception which is 3D in nature, a perception that allows you to see the world in 3D, which is in this motion. So if they allow you to see it in this motion, remember, this is enabling you to understand that you being able to see distance, the width, and the depth simultaneously. So you're able to walk properly, you're able to perceive things properly, you're able to also understand things and see how long, how strong, how deep they are, because of two perceptions that we have, which is called the depth perception. And depth perception is enabled by two major cues, which is called the monocular cue, the binocular cue. Mono is from one eye, binocular is from both the eyes. This completes our understanding with something which is binocular and monocular cues. This completes our today's understanding. We leave it at depth perception understanding. We will be studying the monocular cue, which enables the depth perception, binocular cue, which enables the depth perception in great level. So, hope the understanding today has been good. We have studied what is sensation, the first step for perception. We understood what is attention. We also understood how does organization in the mind takes place and what leads to perception and its steps. And we have moved to something which is the depth perception. Closes our session today. Thank you.